welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So I thought it would be a good time to put together kind of a comprehensive list of Todd McFarlane CGC 9.8 comic books to invest in. And, you know, me being such a big McFarlane fan, I've done videos like this in the past, but they were, you know, just a couple, you know, there was like 4 or 5 CGC 9.8s in the video. So I really wanted to just go over all the Todd McFarlane books that, you know, I don't have all of them, and I really want a lot of these on the list, and ended up just with a great list of some underfollowed ones, but of course all the classics that you still really want to buy if you're a big McFarlane fan. So yeah, it was, I think, as good of a time as ever to kind of do a really comprehensive video. So great mixture. There's 12 CGC 9.8, all Todd McFarlane books in this list. A great mixture of underfollowed and those classics. I want to talk about 2 modern McFarlane books really quick that aren't a part of this list of 12, but I just want to recommend, you know, my list is going to really focus on kind of the 80s and 90s, admittedly. Just when McFarlane kind of came on the scene, those are the books I'm really nostalgic for. But 2 modern books we'll just talk about really quick, because I think if you're in the market for kind of a modern McFarlane book, you could probably go after these. The first one is Venom #1. This came out in January of 2017. And it's the McFarlane black and white sketch cover, and it's basically a reprint of Venom, the Venom cameo from Amazing Spider-Man 299, which is a really cool cameo. But this book came out in sort of a limited print, and there's like a colored version of it, but the black and white sketch version, it was like a retail incentive version, like 1 per store, I think it was. That's really the one that is very popular. It goes quite expensive in the blue label. I think it's over $400. Maybe you get it under $400 in a kind of a deal. But yeah, that would be the first one that seems really popular. Yeah, that cameo reprint, Venom #1. The second one is Venomverse #1, and this is the McFarlane remastered variant. So there's the sketch variant, that's the most rare, and then there's the colored McFarlane remastered. That's still really rare too. I think the colored was 1 to every 1,000 print, and then the sketch was 1 to every 2,000. So yeah, that's what you kind of get with these expensive modern McFarlane books, is the sort of limited print run with yeah, a really cool cover on this one, Venomverse #1. A blue label CGC 9.8 sold on our pricing video last week for like $5.75. So these are expensive books. To be honest, I did want to mention them because they were very popular and really expensive, kind of the ones you want to get for modern McFarlane books. But I think the value is in the list of 12. So yeah, let's get into the list here. Yeah, I probably have about half of these, but there's a lot of really cool ones and some underfollowed ones. So I think a lot of ideas for everyone. Certainly if you're a McFarlane fan after this list. Want to start off with Marvel Age #90. So this one is a Spider-Man #1 preview. Really cool Todd McFarlane cover. Yeah, just really quickly on the census, only 20 CGC 9.8s. 54% is a CGC 9.8 ratio, but only 20 CGC 9.8s out there. And the price kind of reflects this. Looking on eBay, it was pretty interesting. In a blue label, I saw one that had sold for $249.99. And then just in the last week or two here, a signature series CGC 9.8 had sold for $250 as well. So I think what happened was that blue label was a bit of an overpay. I think if you're super patient on this, you probably get this close to 200, maybe even under 200 if you're really patient, really lucky in an auction in the blue label. And then yeah, that signature series going for $250, I think is a pretty decent deal, and kind of shows some of the you know, McFarlane signed books that are kind of flooding the market. I think the prices are coming down a little bit on those. So yeah, about $250 is what I've seen in the completed listings. Maybe you get lucky, get it closer to $200. But I wanted to choose this book and not really talk about Spider-Man #1. Because Spider-Man #1, very classic cover, a 90s cover, and Todd McFarlane. And, you know, the UPC versions of that are very collectible, the polybag UPC versions. And the Walmart version, I believe, is like the most rare one. And then there's like platinum versions and so many different like collector versions of that specific cover of Spider-Man #1. You know, those are really collectible, and if that cover is very nostalgic for you, to me it was just, I saw so many of them as a kid that it kind of, the allure of that cover kind of wore off on me, so I'm not the hugest Spider-Man #1 fan. So this book for me, with 20 CGC 9.8s out there with the Spider-Man #1 preview, I think is kind of a more savvy sort of investment grade CGC 9.8 to go at. Yeah, but Marvel Age number 90, very cool McFarlane cover, 20 in the world. I think it's, yeah, you know, one to get if it sort of matches your budget and you're a huge McFarlane fan. And yeah, I'm sort of really liking how it looks on the census and kind of wanting one too after doing the research for this video and everything. So next book is one that I do have. It's yeah, Amazing Spider-Man number 298. And you know what, this is one of my most nostalgic comic books, and I had actually accidentally had left it out of my most nostalgic comic book video. Accidentally, because yeah, this was the only sort of Todd McFarlane Spider-Man key that I could afford as a kid that I was able to kind of pick up at my local shop. Like 316, I never really saw much. 300, I couldn't afford. But Amazing Spider-Man 298, I did have this one in a nice copy when I was really, really young. And it's the first Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. There's a 656 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label, and 12.9% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So a nice 9.8 ratio on this book, and yeah, prices for this, you kind of see them occasionally for $250-ish, $260, maybe in an old case around $250. Nice looking one, you know, $270, $280, $290, and that's if you're being patient in an auction or, you know, being patient on price. You'll see sort of buy it nows for this book, $350 to $400. But I think for that price, and it's the first Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, and obviously, you know, Todd McFarlane Spider-Man went on to just become a huge cult classic, and so classic. So to kind of get his first Spider-Man art is, I think, you know, an important book if you're a Todd McFarlane fan. And you know, for me, with the nostalgic connection, it was kind of a no-brainer to add this one. And I do kind of want to look for another one, maybe even in the newsstand version, which I would imagine would be probably over $100 or $300. Sorry. But first, Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. Yep, it's the first cameo of Eddie Brock too. So I think, you know, that's one to kind of get, because Todd McFarlane Spider-Man just went on to really captivate people. So to kind of get the first time he drew Spider-Man is pretty important if you're a big Todd McFarlane fan. The next comic book is one sort of completely off the radar, but very cool. A Marvel Tales 235. So this is a classic Todd McFarlane X-Men and Spider-Man cover. And looking on the census for this one, there are only 11 CGC 9.8s. This whole run of Marvel Tales, a couple issues in there where Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane did a couple covers together. So definitely check out that whole run. You might like a couple other covers in there, but this is sort of the only one with Spider-Man and X-Men sort of on the cover. Nice sort of pin-up, team-up style cover. And yes, actually, this pick definitely inspired by Brett, who had let me know on Instagram that he had purchased one of these in the CGC 9.8 and that there was only 11 out there. So I really liked the cover as soon as I saw it. And I remember seeing this in the raw, but never saw it in a crisp 9.8, and it looks really good. 11 9.8s out there, 50% to CGC 9.8 ratio. There's so little graded, so it's a pretty rare book. Brett had purchased his for $227, and he had mentioned the fair market value was about $240. So being that there's only 11 out there, X-Men, Spider-Man, McFarlane cover, it's a very sort of distinct collector item. I think, yeah, this is one you could pick it up for the fair market value. I think if you really like it, it's a good buy, and you hold it for a really long time. Only being about 11 out there now, that probably won't grow too much over time. And just a great kind of cult followed book to have. Yeah, really love the cover too. Marvel Tales 235. Yes, and yeah, 227 is what Brett got it for. So that could be maybe a target price to aim for if you really want that book. Alright, next book, a Batman 423. And you do want to get the first print in the Batman 423, I think. The second and third prints, they're no different. There's nothing like cooler about them, so there's just, you get the first print for sure is kind of the way to go. I've said in the past for this book, this is really like a Spawn prototype almost for me. So in a way, maybe Spawn #1 in a sense, because you got the sort of big Batman cape, sort of cape with a mind of its own, which is really sort of Spawn-like. And I always say kind of the shadows in his eyes is very sort of Spawn-like too. And all the sort of cues from a classic McFarlane cover with the circle in the background. And what is it, 90 in the CGC 9.8 in the blue label on the census. I was looking this morning. So I got 2 of them. Yeah, really wanted this one since I'm a huge Batman fan and a huge Todd McFarlane fan. This is the one to go after if you like Batman a lot and you're a Todd McFarlane fan. There's only 90 on the planet. Yeah, the 14.6 is the CGC 9.8 ratio, so a nice low investment grade ratio, especially for a Batman book. You know, Batman books don't usually have really, really low ratios. So this is relatively rare in the CGC 9.8. And yeah, prices kind of reflect that. $400 about for a really, really nice one with nice scans. And, you know, maybe you get one closer to $350 if you get lucky, or maybe the scans aren't as good or something. But yeah, really nice Batman 423, nicely centered with nice scans and everything, probably going over $400. Yeah, a book I would recommend. I mean, yeah, like I said, I really, really love Batman, and I really, really love Todd McFarlane, and that's the book to get. And the price kind of shows that. So collectible over time, only 90 in the CGC 9.8. That's going to be a good one to hold, and I could just see it getting more popular and more classic, kind of the cover of the era to get if you're a Batman fan too. Even if you don't like Todd McFarlane that much, like, it's just such a great key. Okay, next book is such a classic book that I want, and it's a Malibu Sun #13. So this came out the same month as Spawn #1, and but it basically the release of it predates Spawn #1. So for enthusiasts and collectors, this has kind of become sort of a rare Spawn #1 almost to get. Looking on the census, yeah, only 24 CGC 9.8s, and the CGC 9.8 ratio is 9.8%, which is pretty crazy for a 90s book. Yeah, this to get a under 10% CGC 9.8 ratio in a 90s book is very rare. It's even lower than Batman Adventures 12, First Harley Quinn. So yeah, Malibu Sun #13. I believe, yeah, I think it's a sort of promo magazine. I'm not exactly sure what Malibu Sun is, but it is known among collectors as sort of Spawn #1, because it does predate the release of Spawn #1 apparently. So I was looking on for prices, looking on completed listings on eBay. Didn't see any in the CGC 9.8, which gives you an idea of the rarity of this book. But just doing like a quick Google search and on Go Collect, they have the fair market value for $725 in the CGC 9.8 for this book. So you know what though, if you're a big Spawn fan, we'll get into a couple other Spawn books that you could really consider, but this is definitely one to consider if you're a huge Spawn fan. And yeah, if you want to certainly go the raw route, you know, you don't have to get a CGC 9.8, but with that low CGC 9.8 ratio, and you know, if you got if you're looking at it from an investment perspective, or maybe you got a bunch of cash or something, so you know, money's not too much of an object, a Malibu Sun with that 9.8 CGC 9.8 ratio, and it's a 9.8 ratio, so you just got to get the CGC 9.8 to go with that 9.8 CGC ratio. Saying 9.8 too much. But one I would recommend, and certainly doing the research for this video, it's one that stands out. So another one that stands out is Amazing Spider-Man #300, first appearance and origin of Venom, and very relatively rare book too. Yeah, if you look on the CGC census for Amazing Spider-Man 300, there's 1,002 CGC 9.8s now. So it crept up over 1,000. There were some blue label slabs that were cracked for the Todd McFarlane signature series, and the 9.8s went down in the blue label. They went under 1,000, whereas they were over 1,000, which I thought was funny. But then thinking of the signature series, and we did sort of do a video talking about that. But 1,002 CGC 9.8s in the blue label now, and 5.9% the CGC 9.8 ratio. So that's even lower than the Malibu Sun 13 that I was just talking about, that I said was really rare. And that's why this book's really expensive. It's you know, it's the book to want to get in so many ways. Obviously, first appearance and origin of Venom, first full appearance of Venom. A cover that's classic and homage so many times, which is another great positive, I think. And then on the census, yeah, 5.9%, that CGC 9.8 ratio. So relatively rare for some reason, just compared to how many of there are graded of this. Yeah, only 5.9% of them are CGC 9.8s. And that's really, really low. Pretty much the lowest for an 80s book. Amazing Spider-Man 301, the next book after this, one to consider as well, that I don't have on this list, but very low CGC 9.8 ratio as well. It's really expensive, so, you know, I was thinking of going after 301, but I ended up buying another Amazing Spider-Man 300. It was this one too, because I do have another Amazing Spider-Man 300 in the CGC 9.8. So instead of getting a 301, I just decided to get another one. So you'd have to kind of make that decision maybe, but really recommend Amazing Spider-Man 300. Yeah, first full Venom and origin of Venom, classic Todd McFarlane cover. Really, really rare in the CGC 9.8. So, you know, if money's not an object, this is kind of the investment grade McFarlane book to get, I think. Especially, you know, when you see some of these modern books that are signed, you know, some of those, that Venomverse and the Venom #1 signed books going for, you know, over $1,000 and sort of approaching this book. You know, I would really think it's smarter to sort of take that money and go after buying this book rather than, you know, spending over $500 on some of these modern McFarlane books, but who knows, I could be wrong about that. So next book is a classic McFarlane book. It's Spawn #1, the black and white edition from 1997, and it came out September 1997, this one I think it was. So yeah, let's just look, because I think, you know, I want to do a quick compare here, but if we look on the census, there's 78 of these in the CGC 9.8. And the CGC 9.8 ratios, 15.8% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So pretty relatively rare, especially for a 90s book. You don't see these ratios in 90s books very often, so I could see why these books are so expensive. But yeah, this was just a very low printed sort of reprint of Spawn #1 that came out basically almost 5 years after Spawn #1 came out. So, you know, looking on prices, the fair market value on Go Collect, actually, a quick one, was $1,200, because I didn't see any completed listings on eBay actually for this book. $1,200, I think if you get really, really lucky and you're patient, you get that closer to $100 in the blue label. Yeah, $1,200 I think is a little bit overpriced for what I've seen in the past Spawn #1 black and white sell for, but. So yeah, I mentioned I kind of wanted to do a comparison because, yeah, with this one, say, you know, being, let's just call it a little over $1,000 would be a pretty good price for Spawn #1 black and white. It's really become really one of the collector items for Spawn fans, to be honest. Yeah, 78 of them in the CGC 9.8, 15% CGC 9.8 ratio. Looking at Malibu Sun 13, where there's less CGC 9.8s, it's more rare. The 9.8 ratio is 9.8%, so the lower the better when we're talking about 9.8 ratios, compared to 15 for the Spawn #1 black and white. And then the price for Malibu Sun being $725-ish is the fair market value, whereas fair market value for Spawn black and white is $1,200 on Go Collect, but probably a little closer to $1,000. But still, that's a couple $100 difference for sure, at least. So I really think, you know, Malibu Sun 13 is probably, you know, can do some catch-up here to Spawn black and white. It's more relatively rare on the census, so I think in price it could do some catch-up. So Malibu Sun, again, looking really good, I think, when you compare it to Spawn #1 black and white. But you can't go wrong with Spawn #1 black and white, too. It's really become the book to get for Spawn collectors, even more so than Spawn #1 Newsstand, which is, we'll get into that book as well on our list here. So Spawn #1, black and white from 1997. If you're a huge Spawn fan, that's definitely one to consider. Next book here is Incredible Hulk 340. Yeah, so you got your classic McFarlane, Wolverine and Hulk cover with the reflection, which has, you know, the more you look at it and the more you see it, it's just better and better with time. It's one of those covers for sure. And this is the second time ever Wolverine and Hulk fought. And it took over 10 years for them to fight again after the first appearance of Wolverine. So yeah, pretty special issue in that way. a cover that's really like captivated people, and a must, I think, if you're a McFarlane fan for sure. Yeah, look on the census here. 686 CGC 9.8. It's a really popular book, so you're not gonna sort of see those really, really low numbers. You know, just a popular Marvel book still. Relative rareness, 14.2% is the CGC 9.8 ratio, which is a nice, pretty low ratio for an 80s book. Yeah, and the price kind of reflects that. You know, pretty low ratio, not too many of them. Great classic McFarlane cover. So, yeah, for a nice one in the blue label with nice scans and everything, you know what you're gonna get. It's over 400 now. Yeah, 425 I would say for a really nice one. Picky with the centering on this one. You got the McFarland and Bob Wycheck signatures here on the spine. Yeah, you want to kind of be picky on the center because if they're curving around the spine, that does affect the value in this book, kind of 10 to 20%, the CGC 9.8, because then you kind of see only like half of McFarland's signature kind of curling around the spine. So you might get one of those under 400, but sort of prominent signatures like this one here, I was kind of picky for this one. And this is a really nicely centered one. No pages sticking out the side. Yeah, you're looking over 400. 425-ish, I think, is a good deal. Yep, classic Hulk Wolverine. Over time, it's going to get more classic. And, yeah, it's sort of good. Like, I always like to compare Incredible Hulk, having them side by side. Incredible Hulk 340 and Batman 423. Very comparable. Just great covers, classic covers, and I would say Batman's sort of the more cult followed with less than 100 of them, and then a Marvel book, Hulk 340, but really popular. Second time Hulk and Wolverine fight, so it's so classic that way too. And about the same price too is why I would sort of compare them. And where is, okay, yeah, I think this is the next one here. Yes, okay. Next McFarlane book you want to invest in is Spawn #1 in the newsstand here. So yes, certainly among collectors, you want to get the newsstand now with Spawn #1. It's sort of become known as the one to get, whereas the direct version has, I would say, slowly crept down in price. Now a Spawn #1 in the CGC 9.8 direct version you can get for $100 pretty much is like a good deal. Maybe if you're patient, even like $90 for a Spawn #1, but in the newsstand, not a lot of newsstands coming out of Image. You know, back in the day, they were just all going direct to the comic shops pretty much. And yeah, you get the first appearance of Spawn, classic, super nostalgic Spawn cover, and it's a little bit harder on the census. You know, I like that Malibu Sun and Spawn #1 black and white. Much more clarity on the census because the newsstands and the direct are all bundled together on Spawn #1. There's like 5,318 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. That's so many. 52.6%, so over half of them are CGC 9.8s. Over half of all graded copies are CGC 9.8s. So not very rare, certainly in the direct. So that's why that's $100. So, you know, if you're kind of looking at it from an investment perspective and you do want to get the newsstand version, and I sort of conservatively I take 5% of that number, 5,318, as a sort of conservative estimate of how many newsstand Spawn #1s are out there, and it's like 262 it comes out to, something like that. So I think there's probably closer to 300-400 out there, to be honest, in the CGC 9.8, but still to kind of have a one of 300-400. Spawn #1, such a classic cover that we all love from the 90s, I'm sure. So, yep, still one that you want to invest in. And, you know, definitely the newsstand version over the direct version if you are sort of thinking about it from an investment perspective, I guess. So, the next one is a book I don't have, and one completely off the radar, but I think a great cover, and maybe you can even look at getting it in the raw. It's Guardians of the Galaxy #5. This is an X-Men #4 cover homage. So you kind of got them all sitting around the table, like sort of on X-Men #4, I think it was Magneto and the whole X-Men on the cover too, but a really good sort of montage homage of that cover. It's McFarlane and Jim Valentino art team up on the cover. So an early McFarlane piece. I think it's just a really cool Guardians of the Galaxy cover too, regardless if McFarlane did the art or not. But yeah, interesting. There's 3 CGC 9.8s in the blue label out there on the planet. So I think there's only 9 of these ever graded. So this pick is kind of inspired from a great friend of mine and team member, Tony, the McFarlane collector on Instagram. And yeah, definitely look at adding Tony, the McFarlane collector, on Instagram. But he has one of these three CGC 9.8s, and he had posted it on his Instagram quite a while ago. But I sort of took note of it back then, and I was looking this morning and definitely wanted to throw it in the video. Such a cool cover. I didn't see any completed listings, and there's actually no fair market value on Go Collect either, because so little of them sell. I think there might be if you're signed up and everything, if you pay the thing, but I don't. So, but based that there's only 3 of them in the CGC 9.8, you know, I would think this a good deal for this would be anywhere in between $200 to $250. But you know, I could definitely see someone, if they're not in a hurry to get rid of it, putting it on eBay for like $350 to $400, and somebody maybe taking that bait, to be honest. Yeah, great Guardians of the Galaxy cover. Guardians of the Galaxy #5. Yeah, Jim Valentino and Todd McFarlane team up covers, kind of. So yeah, just one right out of left field there, but a great Guardians of the Galaxy cover. I thought it was awesome. Next book is a classic, and you know, kind of picking and choosing here. Amazing Spider-Man 316, the first cool Venom cover. I really thought about either this one or Amazing Spider-Man 299, which is the first Venom cameo. Great, awesome cameo. That one, Todd McFarlane. Story cover and art, I'm pretty sure, in that one. Or probably David McFarlane story, actually. But Venom cover here. Such a classic cover. Amazing Spider-Man 316. Yeah, looking on the census, not too rare for this one. It's really all about the classic Venom art. 873 CGC 9.8s. 9.8 ratio, 29%. So not particularly rare for an 80s book of this age. Whereas, like, it's kind of same sort of age. Incredible Hulk 340 is 14.2%. It was 29%. So yeah, like certainly other books that are much more rare, I think, in the CGC 9.8 than Amazing Spider-Man 316. But again, this one, it's really all about the cover. Good price on this one, and that's why I would recommend it too. Still, even though, you know, not too rare with the CGC 9.8 ratio, but this is just one. The cover art's amazing, so still one to recommend as an investment. Price. So good deal is closer to $250, and saw some of these go for over $300, but I wouldn't really pay over $300. There's quite a lot of these out there. $873. So be patient on an auction, you get it for like $250, $260. That's how I got one for $261 was my final price in an auction on one of them. And another one, I had bought it in the raw and sent it to CGC, and it came back at 9.8. So I do have 2 of these. But yeah, closer to $250, good price. And, you know, not the rarest, but I think even if, you know, you still want to have it in your sort of McFarlane comic book investment portfolio, I think. Okay, last book here is a Spawn Batman. And I have recommended this book in the past. And great thing about this book, you know, you get the Batman Dark Knight Returns cover homage kind of thing here with the Spawn Batman crossover, but you know, to cover homage Batman Dark Knight Returns, but you actually get Frank Miller doing the story for this book, which I think is awesome. You know, it's one thing to homage, but then to get sort of Frank Miller to be involved with the book is great. Another thing, and my main recommendation for, or my main reason for recommending this book is the interiors of this book. Todd McFarlane Batman interiors are just awesome, and you know, the one I've said this in videos, one thing I really wish happened in comic book history was Todd McFarlane did a Batman run. So, you know, just like 10 or 20 issues of Batman, Todd McFarlane story cover art. Oh, that's like my dream. But this gives you a little taste of it. There's some great interiors in here, some like, you know, pin out pages where Batman's kind of just hanging out on a rooftop with his cape everywhere, and then at the end, it's like Spawn's face with like Batman's like ninja star in his face almost, or his bat star kind of thing, throwing it in his face at the end. So that's an interesting kind of ending too to it. Yeah, great Batman interiors. Todd McFarlane, affordable book. Yeah, look on the census quick. It's 169 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. 46.8% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So yeah, price on this book, you're looking, the lower end is going to be kind of like 80, 85-ish in an auction. Yeah, I've heard of a couple people grabbing it for that price. I paid like 110 for one, I think it was, and like 125 for another one, because I do have two of these. Yeah, again, those Batman interiors, just, you know, I'd honestly probably buy another one, because, yeah, I just love the Batman interiors, and I just really wish there was more Todd McFarlane Batman, is one of the things. Okay, pretty quick there, got through 12 of them. And, yeah, CGC 9.8, Todd McFarlane books to invest in, and I think a good mixture here of all the classics, and then some under-the-radar ones, though, too, that are still great investment books. And, yeah, you know, like, concluding up, I think my sort of pick out of the whole thing, and my sort of realization after doing all the research for this video this morning and everything, is, you know, I think I really want a Malibu Sun 13, CGC 9.8. It's going to be, you know, one I'll have to be patient on, 24 of them in the CGC 9.8, really low CGC 9.8 ratio, you know, it's 725 is the fair market value. I bet on eBay it's probably going to be over $800 to get that book. But, yeah, besides Amazing Spider-Man 300, this Malibu Sun 13 is the most rare, relatively rare book on this whole list. So, yeah, and given that it predates Spawn, it's kind of known as Spawn, the first sort of appearance of Spawn in all publications. I think that is sort of my pick. You know, underfollowed cool pick, Marvel Tales, number 235, that X-Men Spidey cover. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that one. Maybe even in the raw, if you're, you know, maybe not the biggest fan of that cover. It was only 11 in the CGC 9.8. Might be just a good one to keep your eye open for in a raw. Yeah, Marvel Tales, what was it, 235? Yeah, X-Men, Spidey, and McFarlane. Yeah, almost can't go wrong with those three. So, yeah, obviously left a couple of books out. You know, I kind of didn't want the list to get too long. So, yeah, definitely leave me some comments if you want of some of your favorite McFarlane key issues out there. Yeah, I know there's even some like X-Force issues, some X-Factor issues I was kind of left out. But could have went down that route with some great covers in there, kind of team-ups with Liefeld and New Mutants 87. Yeah, another team-up with Liefeld for First Cable. So yeah, a lot of ways you can go with this, but I think in the main list, we got all the classics in there that you should really aim for. And yeah, a couple of other ideas, I think. So, all right, full McFarlane list. I think it's about time I did a comprehensive McFarlane list rather than... Yeah, I think the first, I maybe did one video about McFarlane books, and it was just kind of showing off 5 or 6 that I had, so definitely wanted to do a more comprehensive one. If you haven't already, I'd invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8, and hit the bell to get all our latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter too, got all the links in the description below. So yeah, hopefully you got some ideas from this video. I'm a huge McFarlane fan, so I really wanted to just gather all the McFarlane books and think of some ones that I don't have too, just from, you know, what I've seen on the internet in the past couple of years that, you know, as a McFarlane fan that I really wanted. And yeah, I think, yeah, concluding up that Malibu Sun 13 in the CGC 9.8, there's not a lot of them out there, but I think that's pretty much the pick of the list. And yeah, I really think I might have to kind of drill down and look for that one in the CGC 9.8. As elusive as it probably is, though, 24 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label. Alright, thanks so much for watching today, though. Yeah, hopefully you got some ideas here. If yeah, if you're a McFarlane fan, you probably know about most of these, but kind of just cool to look on the census and get that information, kind of know which ones are the rarest. Yeah, besides Malibu Sun and the Marvel Tales as a pick, can't go wrong with Amazing Spider-Man 300. The facts are on your side with that book, with that, yeah, 5.9% CGC 9.8 ratio it was. Yeah, 5.9%. That's like so relatively rare. Yeah, there's really nothing else in the 80s that matches that, except the book after it, 301, but it's not really the biggest key. And then there's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, which is just like so rare and so expensive, so... Okay, I guess I'll stop blabbering on about McFarlane books, which I can really do for a long time. Thanks for all the comments, though, and appreciate all of the feedback I'm getting, and having great conversations on Instagram, too. Message me on Instagram if you did have any questions. Thanks for watching, though. Really appreciate the support, team. I'll see you on the next one.